Calvin. And
Yeah.
closing comments would be the next item on the agenda, and we are half an hour early, ahead of schedule, surprisingly. But we glossed over a lot of details, so closing comments can certainly cover a lot of the material that we glossed over. I mean, for instance, I had indicated that over the past year, we have a much clearer idea of the timeline for build out, and we don't have specificity on build out, but we know that recipients of the RDOF funds have 6 years to provide services to those census blocks. And we know that while SpaceX is in beta, they are continuously launching satellites at a record pace. So there's plenty of conversation in those details about what the landscape looks like for broadband in Mendocino County based on that. And again, there's a lot more material that we quickly covered trying to meet the 30-minute timeline for the presentation. So now might be a good opportunity to bring up some of those other points. I mean, obviously, the ideal build out would be the 3 implementation plans of North Bay North Coast Broadband Consortium, and we need to continue to support that because underground fiber optics provides redundancy and speeds that these other carriers might not. There are flaws to the RDOF programs. But I think that, I mean, all we can do is push the needle, ideally, in terms of the build out. But there are elements that are moving forward and areas that will be served in time. I think that where Tom and I are having meetings with all 5 of the RDOF winners and asking them about their plans. And while they are given 6 years to provide services to the census blocks where they're the winning bidders, they might actually have a truncated timeline. And some of the partners are saying that in 2 years, they hope to be operational. So the landscape of broadband or internet services in Mendocino County, we're getting a clearer picture of what areas might come online over in 2 years, in 4 years, in 6 years, in 8 years. And so I'll open it up to the broader discussion of broadband implementation or any comments you care to make.
Jeff, I forgot to mention about the Starlink, and I wanted to comment on Supervisor Williams' comments earlier. So we did a Starlink push in Sonoma County, working with communities, and residents are subscribing to it. And just to kind of confirm the initial test results is that and I am a subscriber as well. I received the equipment, so I've been testing it, and a few of my neighbors have received it as well. We're in Forestville, so we have redwoods. We're up in the Forest Hills, so we're surrounded by the redwoods, and we currently experience about 4 hours of obstructions each day, and we have pretty good visibility of the sky, but it's just the redwoods where the satellite points to in the northern hemisphere. It just catches the tips of the redwoods, so we experience drops pretty frequently throughout the day. It's not that reliable for Zoom, but it is great in downloading large packages because it has no data cap in the speeds. So, I think I downloaded a 50 gigabyte package the other day in a day for the first time. Before, I was doing that in like 3 days with my previous service. So, I guess the initial speed test results, I am interested to see how, as we are making recommendations for services, if Starlink is one of them, I hope that the service does continue to improve, though I am concerned about the visibility factor in some of the more forested communities and trying to figure out a solution there. But I am excited about the Starlink services as well. It's just there are some. It seems like there's some issues that need to be sorted out.
And local to Mendocino County, I'm on the COMSHI Broadband Committee, and they're closely tracking Starlink as well. And there are some good groups on Facebook that are posting their speed tests and cataloging the outages and the flaws. I think that SpaceX and Starlink have deployed maybe 1/10 of the satellites that they eventually hope to deploy, and so that timeline seems as though they might be fully operational. I mean, I don't know when they'll technically be out of beta, but I think that those gaps in services will be resolved as more and more satellites are deployed. They just need to cover the sky a little more thoroughly.
Has any of the dialogue been brought up about pollution to space?
I've heard those comments, certainly.
Well, the astronomy community is very much opposed to this because they are concerned about the negative impact on their research.
True, it is a drawback. I could also bring up that Further Reach is making great strides in the COMSHI community as well. They continue to add to their territory. And I'm not sure, I mean, I know specific to COMSHI, but I imagine they're also reaching out in different directions. So if anyone has other carriers that they want to bring up, or
I'd like to, this is Tom again, I'd like to mention that Connie Stewart, my counterpart in the Redwood Coast Connect Consortium, and I participated in Senator McGuire's town hall meeting with regard to the Great Redwood Trail. And subsequent to that meeting, we wrote a letter on behalf of our consortium, an unofficial letter, suggesting that as that trail is built out from the San Francisco Bay to the Humboldt Bay, that they consider deploying fiber for an open access middle mile capability. And the senator is committed to making that happen. It's a long-term strategy. We will be going back to our oversight committee for an official endorsement of that. And I'm working on getting some maps to show how that might work out. But for Mendocino County, it would be from Cloverdale to the northern border. And it would be our route in Project 1, which is currently along the 101, but it could be along the North Coast Rail Authority property. We've considered that as an alternative along the way. So I just want to mention the fact that these things have the potential to come together.
thank you, Tom. So we're listing out some individual carriers and the detail there. Any other topics? I mean, the agenda item is also topics for future consideration. So the timing of this meeting was a little truncated because a lot of the detail was delivered during the presentation, and I didn't know, I had assumed we would be right up to the 2-hour mark, but I stand corrected.
You might take the opportunity to date and time the Board of Supervisor meeting.
All right, it is on Monday, the 22nd, and the Move 2030, I believe, starts at 9:30, and we follow after that. So presuming that they have a half-an-hour presentation and their presentation is extended by questions, but I mean, play it safe and be there at 9:30 or 10, depending on whether you want to. I mean, I hope that you also tune in for the Move 2030 presentation on that day.
Are these presentations going to be put in the can first and presented that way, or is it live?
I believe it's live. Just, it'll be a meeting similar to this, only with
The meeting's live, but our presentation.
it will be live as well. We'll have to work out these details. I mean, so I think, I mean, the information provided to the clerk of the board should be, I have a deadline to get that in pretty soon. The presentations that you saw will be largely the body of that, but we will be given a link. Those who are participating will be given a link. And so Tom and Megan I will share those links with you, and we're going to be doing essentially the same thing as we have done here today. As that is provided, I'll forward it to you. Both Supervisor Hasjack and Supervisor Williams probably have a lot more information. I mean, they might have some advice as to how to make it work seamlessly.
Well, thanks. I was just going to say that, yeah, you do need to submit it to the clerk of the board beforehand, so they have it because it's public record.
Yes. What are the challenges for participants that you've experienced, like last year as chair? I think that the county is doing a much better job. They're coming on board, but it seems technical glitches exist at every level, state, county, and federal meetings. So,
but I think that if you you know, get it in beforehand, and it seems like things have been going pretty well as far as presentations. So,
yeah.
Knock on wood. Right.
Thank you, Supervisor Hasjack. Any other topics for future agendas? Those can be submitted in time. Feel free to contact me anytime. Hearing none, shall we call the meeting at
real quick?
11:40?
One idea might be, and you can try to figure this out, I guess, but different service providers, maybe having them talk about their capabilities within the county, just kind of an educational piece. And I know they don't like to come to the table at the same time, but you know, invite AT&T, talk about their density, you know, what their, I guess, what their grid or whatever it looks like, for what they call it, the term they use. And then we might be able to learn more about, you know, each time they come, a little bit more about what the services are within the county. And then they also have, each of them have their own competitive program like FirstNet, and we could kind of get some information one at a time. Generally, they just don't all come at once. They won't do head to head, not even in like legislative affairs. So that might be an idea.